I am Bill Thompson. I head the OECD's Eurasia division, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this webinar on promoting SME digitalization in the Eastern Partner region. I want us to cut straight to the substantive program as quickly as possible, so I will limit myself to some purely technical announcements. The first is that I ask that all of you mute yourselves when you do not have the floor. If you're not speaking, making an intervention, or raising a question, please keep your microphone on mute to avoid sound interference from wherever you are affecting the meeting. Perhaps the host can also help keep folk muted when they don't speak. Secondly, if you do wish to take the floor in the discussion to raise a question or make a comment, you can type it into the chat function if you wish, and I will try and bring it, give you the floor when possible. Or you can raise your hand in Zoom fashion by opening the participants menu and choosing the raise hand option, which is in Zoom. So either way, you can kind of raise the little blue hand icon or type in the chat. Finally, a word about interpretation. We do have simultaneous interpretation between English and Russian today. Turning that on and off is fairly simple. There's a little globe icon in your Zoom menu for interpretation. Choose the language you need. Just 2 points to be aware of. The first is that you may wish to mute the original language in order to avoid hearing both versions at once. And the second, and it's probably the most important, is that if you take the floor to make a comment or an intervention or raise a question, if you take the floor, turn interpretation off, because if you are speaking while the interpretation is switched on, it can create technical interference for you and on occasion also for other participants. So just switch off interpretation before you speak. That's all I want to say, because I'd rather get on to the real meat of the agenda. And so I'm very happy to pass the floor now for some introductory remarks to my boss, the OECD's Director of Global Relations, Andreas Schall.
Thanks so much, Bill, and welcome to all of you. Thanks for attending this webinar on promoting SME digitalization in the Eastern Partner countries. I'm really pleased to see so many of you here today to discuss a topic that is a priority for both OECD economies, but also Eastern Partner countries. Special thanks from our side to Mathieu Bousquet from the European Commission, Konrad Pawlik from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Ambassador Suraj of Poland, for supporting this important work and for your presence here today to open this event with me. Let me start by saying digitalization offers, as we all know, unprecedented opportunities for SMEs to overcome size limitations, boost their productivity, boost innovation, boost sales performance. However, in our study, we show that SMEs are lagging behind in adapting to the digital transformation and often struggle to embrace its benefits. This results in lower productivity, growing inequalities between firms. Just as an example to illustrate, only 31% of small companies in the OECD use enterprise resource planning solutions, compared to 82% in large companies. Companies from Eastern Partner countries are also making progress, but still lag behind some OECD countries in adapting digital solutions and a digital culture. The scattered evidence we have indicates that the gap becomes even more pronounced as technologies become more advanced. Now, of course, this crisis has a further impact on the heightened need for SME digitalization. Many companies had to move their operations online, and they were forced to implement digital solutions to remain in business. So in a way, this crisis is also an opportunity to harness the benefits of digitalization. Our surveys, our work suggests that 70% of SMEs intensified their use of digital technologies last year. Most of these changes will remain in place even after the pandemic. The crisis also revealed the need to work harder to mitigate the risks associated with digitalization. Now, coming to the solution part, let me highlight the 4 key messages, what we see in the OECD for policymakers as fields of actions. First, we need to adopt a holistic approach to digitalization and make sure that we tackle a wide range of barriers that prevent SMEs from adopting digital solutions. These include infrastructure access, lack of data culture, digital awareness, but also financing and skills gaps. Skills for the people is crucial in this moment of further digitalization. Second, policy can do much to help SMEs to overcome these barriers and adapt to a digital world. Policy interventions can range from awareness raising campaigns, complex advisory services, training, financial support services, and regulatory reform. In this context, we believe that we also need to start systematically to collect data to better measure and the uptake of digital solutions by SMEs. Third avenue to pursue digital transformation cannot be pursued in isolation from broader economic reforms. And this is where we have been working with the Eastern partner countries quite intensively. We believe that Eastern partner countries could and should continue their efforts to level the playing field for all companies, ensure the rule of law, and create an environment conducive to entrepreneurship and investment. To accompany Eastern partner governments in this endeavor, we have just established a new OECD project. And here again, I'm grateful to the European Union as part of the EU for Business initiative that will provide policy advice to accelerate the digital transformation of SMEs in the Eastern partner regions. Let me conclude my intervention today. Today's meetings is an important opportunity to share the experiences we all have, how to help SMEs to benefit from digital technologies and succeed in fast-changing global markets. In this context, you can all contribute a lot, and we are very much looking forward to a fruitful and rich discussion today. Thank you very much indeed. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Andreas. As Andreas mentioned, the work we're doing here is in large part funded by the European Union, by DG NEAR, and also behind me by the Polish government. And so I want to turn first to Mr. Mathieu Bosquet, the head of unit in NEAR, DG NEAR in the neighborhood east of the European Commission, for a few words, and then we will pass to Ambassador Pawlik from Poland.
Thank you, Bill, good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me thank OECD, Andreas, Bill, Daniel, and the team for the continued fruitful collaboration over the years. I also wish to thank them for organizing this event to discuss about the importance of the SME digitalization in the Eastern neighborhood. Indeed, this is a crucial step for the economic recovery in this extraordinary time that we all have to cope with. I'm delighted to see among us today prominent policymakers and representatives of the business sector, as well as Professor Four, whom I look forward to hear from. The moment to start this discussion could not have been better chosen. Since last year, we've seen our economies and businesses put under a lot of strain and even coming sometimes to an almost complete stop. This happened both in the European Union and in the Eastern Partnership. But this crisis has shown us that when trade within our continent does not function smoothly, everyone pays a price. Our industry, our many SMEs in the supply chain, our consumers, and our economies. The COVID-19 crisis created enormous pressure on businesses and governments in the region. Let me just recall that to respond to the crisis, the European Union mobilized an emergency support package of €1 billion for the Eastern Partnership region to foster the social and economic recovery of the 6 Eastern Partnership countries. SMEs are the backbone of the Eastern Partnership economy. They represent 90% of all companies and provide about half of the employment. As Commissioner Thierry Breton says, they also act as a social glue for local communities, keeping citizens at work and generating innovative ideas. SMEs are of systemic importance, and they are a strategic partner for the recovery. We believe that our way out of this crisis is a joint path. We want to ensure that entrepreneurs and businesses can get the financial and practical support they need. that they are able to reconnect with suppliers or start new partnerships and have renewed access to markets in Europe and beyond. During the different lockdowns, companies that were more digitalized have better managed to navigate through the crisis. They did so by adjusting their business models via remote working, diversification of clients, and online services. However, compared to larger firms, many SMEs lag behind in the digital transformation. When looking back, we believe that in addition to enhanced access to finance for SMEs, Eastern Partnership countries would benefit from accelerating their digitalization. SMEs are often unaware of opportunities to increase productivity and competitiveness through digitalization. They struggle identifying their digitalization needs and lack the financial means to digitalize their operations. The SME digital gap slows productivity growth. It increases inequalities among people, among firms, and among geographies. This is why I'm really proud today, to launch with OECD the second phase of this program, EU for Business from Policy to Action, that will be implemented in partnership between EU and OECD, and with the support of Poland, as I understand. The program will continue assisting Eastern Partnership countries in developing their SME strategies with a specific focus on digitalization. To conclude, allow me to stress one more time the three following points. First, Eastern Partnership economies will manage future shocks only if SMEs are resilient. Second, digitalization is key to build stronger and more productive and more resilient SMEs. And third, to secure decent jobs for all, SMEs have to thrive and innovate. So to get over this crisis successfully, the digitalization of SMEs has to be at the heart of our recovery. This is also the motto of President von der Leyen, building back better. Ladies and gentlemen, we count on you, our key stakeholders, to face these challenges together. We need to work together on achieving a swift recovery from the crisis with SMEs, and the digitalization is in the heart of this process. Let me reconfirm the EU willingness to support all of you in this journey. So thank you for your attention, and I wish us a very successful discussion and engagement today, and a lot of policy ideas on how to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mathieu. And now we pass the floor briefly to Poland, a country that is a long-standing supporter of OECD work in the region and is co-financing this particular work with the European Union. And so I'm very happy to hand the floor to a good friend of the program and of mine and my colleagues, Deputy Director of the Department of Economic Cooperation in the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Konrad Pawlik. Konrad, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Bill. Your Excellencies, distinguished ministers, presidents, members of parliaments, dear directors, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank the OECD for organizing this important webinar. We highly value cooperation with the OECD, which is the best multidisciplinary analytical center whose aim is to help countries to design their public policies in order to improve the quality of life of their citizens. We are glad that the OECD, the EU, and Poland cooperate closely in order to assist the Eastern partner countries in enhancing digitalization of the small and medium-sized enterprises. We regret that due to the pandemic, it is not possible to organize a physical seminar. In the last years, Poland has made great progress in the field of digitalization. A separate ministry dedicated to digitalization was created in 2015. Last year, the issues of digitalization were transferred to the Prime Minister's supervision, which further emphasizes the importance given to this issue by Poland. In Polish companies, the pandemic has significantly accelerated the digital transformation. Today, digitalization determines the success of enterprises, whether they are competitive, whether they are able to reduce costs, and introduce products expected by the market. For many companies, the strategy to adapt to the new reality has become the development of the digital tools and online services. According to the report of the World Bank and of the Polish Agency for Enterprises Development, 32% of companies started to use or increase the use of internet, social media, specialized application or digital platforms in the wake of the pandemic. In this manner, the companies mainly improved their sales, marketing and management. Companies that so far had not thought about selling online suddenly decided to change their policy and switch to this channel. Importantly, these solutions are not temporary. They will also allow companies to develop it in the post-pandemic reality. The digitalization of the activities of the small and medium-sized enterprises is a challenge also for the Eastern partner countries. That is why Poland has engaged financially in the project that is being started by today's webinar. Let me emphasize that the OECD conducts for more than 10 years an important regional program addressed to the Eastern partner countries, and Poland was one of its initiators. In our opinion, the OECD Eurasia Competitiveness Program is one of the most valuable and effective of the OECD regional programs. Poland would like to bring the countries of the region closer to the OECD standards. We encourage Ukraine and other Eastern Partnership countries to become more interested in the organization and, more importantly, to implement its standards and use analytical resources in terms of reforms implemented by the government. Although many still consider the organization the club of rich nations, in fact, the OECD is the club of reformers. In this context, we welcome the fact that the OECD-Ukraine Memorandum of Understanding has been renewed for 5 years until October 2025 by Prime Minister Szmyhal. This year, Poland celebrates the 25th anniversary of the membership in the OECD. We benefited a lot from the membership and day-to-day cooperation with the Secretariat. Over the last 30 years, Poland has developed at an astonishing rate, and the real GDP has tripled. Today, as an advanced economy, we are ready to share our knowledge and experience in solving specific problems, as for instance, digitalization. Poland engages in the development of cooperation with the third countries from different geographic regions. In the context of the OECD external policy, our priority is certainly Eurasia region. Although we think that balanced relations of the OECD with other regions of the world are also important. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all team members of the Eurasia Competitiveness Program, as well as the EU and Polish experts who were involved in the preparation of this project. We are happy that we could push this project together. I wish to all participants of this webinar a fruitful and good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Konrad, for those words and for your support over many years. I'm now very happy to turn to our keynote speaker, Professor Nathan Furr, who is Associate Professor of Strategy at INSEAD, where he teaches innovation and technology strategy, and has quite a lengthy CV, but I will stop there because I'd rather pass the floor direct to Nathan and let us hear what he has to tell us. Good morning. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I am indeed, my name is Nathan Furr. I'm a professor at INSEAD, based out of the French campus. I started my career in industry, did my PhD at Stanford, and now live and work in Europe. Since I am a professor, I am going to share slides with you. Sorry about that. That's what we do as professors. I want to talk about digitization and digital transformation. As I mentioned a little bit about my work, I do work on how to establish companies innovate. This is captured in books and articles that have been published by Harvard, but also digital transformation. Again, books and articles that have been published, and this is one of my key areas of interest. A little bit about myself personally. If you use Instagram, the founders of Instagram were my students when I was at Stanford. I used to love these founders until I have 4 children, until they became teenagers. And now they're glued to their phone all day. And now I'm not so happy about Instagram. But to our key topic here on digital transformation, my goal is to help you very quickly give you an overview of my view of digital transformation and what it means. As Andreas, Mathieu, and Konrad mentioned, COVID has had a major impact in accelerating the importance of digital transformation as a topic and as a strategy. Now, some of you may be a little skeptical. Why are we talking so much about digital transformation? Is this truly something that I need to pay attention to? And let me suggest to you that it is, and why. In my view, digital transformation is the conversation we're having because of the exponential growth in computing power. That's the foundational force that is driving the importance of digital transformation. So that what we see today is we have more computing power than ever before. A child anywhere in the world in their pocket with their smartphone has a computer that is more powerful and faster, 120 million times faster than all the computing power that NASA had in 1969 when they put somebody on the moon. That's sitting in the pockets of people around the world. And it's not just technology that's changing, it's people that are changing. We are adopting, consumers are adopting technologies faster than ever before. So for example, the DVD player once broke records for being the fastest adopted consumer electronics device in history. They sold 300,000 units in 1 year. Compare that to the iPad that sold 3 million units in 3 months. And as we move from physical to digital products, a product like Pokemon Go having 500 million downloads in 2 months and making $2 million a day for a free app. So consumers are adopting faster. And what does this mean? What these technologies are doing is they're opening industries. A formerly closed industry like the automobile industry suddenly has dozens and hundreds of new entrants. So new opportunities are opening. It's creating new channels. So for example, you may see this young man taking a photo of a grocery store shelf and wondering what he's doing. But if you back up, you see he's waiting for the metro. So grocery stores reaching consumers in new ways. It's changing the nature of activities. NASA is one of the great space organizations and they pride themselves on their scientific prowess, but digital has allowed them to open up and take problems that formerly were solved by highly trained scientists and using crowdsourcing, open that up to the public in general. And what they found is when they do that, they're able to solve familiar problems faster. So for example, one of the problems that they had spent decades trying to solve is how to predict solar flares. They opened this problem up to the crowd, meaning to people in general, using a digital platform, and somebody in a small community, a retired engineer, came up with a solution that large groups of dedicated scientists had not been able to solve. So my point here is to say that digital transformation has immense potential, but what is it and what does it mean for your countries and companies? If I were to take, I'm going to try to answer this in two ways. First, I'm going to try to talk about what it is in terms of its elements. To me, digital transformation is about the sets of opportunities enabled by computers, large and small. Now, this has been something we've had for decades. What's different is that the computers are sitting in your pockets, they're sitting on your wrists, they're in the cloud, they're embedded in devices. So what can we do when that is happening? It's about the changes being created by software. Again, software has been around for decades. What's changing is that application program interfaces, or APIs, allow us to connect databases and activities in new ways so that it's easier than ever to coordinate and connect activities. It's about changes in connectivity. Connectivity is becoming ubiquitous so that once we were unconnected, now it feels like we're always connected, and it's not just us, it's our devices, it's our equipment that are connected. And it's about data being produced by physical sensors, being produced by digital sensors, say when you use a website, and what can we do with all those things? So that to me is the essence of digital transformation. And to give you a simple example, you could have 30 years ago created a ride-sharing business like the very famous Uber or Didi or Grab, depending on what part of the world you are in, which essentially allows a consumer to connect with somebody who's willing to give them a ride. You could have created that business 30 years ago. It would have required a lot of work though. You would have needed to gather a list of drivers and their phone numbers. You would need to post those phone numbers all over the town. When somebody arrived at the train station and wanted a ride from the station to their destination, that would have required you as the operator calling this long list of phone numbers, finding somebody who was available, making sure they were near the train station. It would have been a lot of work. But when instead today, somebody's carrying a supercomputer in their pocket with GPS location, and you can use a digital platform to make the match between riders and drivers to complete the payment transaction, suddenly a new business like Uber becomes possible. So really, to me, digital transformation is asking that question. It is, we could say, complemented or complicated by new technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, automation, mixed reality, cloud computing, all these things. These are new technologies that are going to allow us to do even more in the future. So I've tried to paint a picture that digital transformation is full of opportunities and is here to stay. But what does it really mean for SMEs? If I could share with you two archetypes, by which I mean two types of digital transformation that will help you think about what to really focus on, I think that would help. So the first archetype is going to be represented by this company Mastercard, which many of you know as a payment platform, connecting merchants who want to take payment with consumers who want to pay for a product. For decades, Mastercard has competed against Visa, American Express, and other credit cards for this share of the market that is transacted via credit cards. Recently, the CEO had a huge strategic insight. He said, 85% of the world's payments are done with cash. Instead of competing with Visa for 15% of the market, let's compete with cash. That's 85% of the market. Now, that's a vague strategic ambition. So what does that mean? It took experimentation to discover new opportunities, but the big insight was that every time we replace cash with a payment, it's not just about the actual payment transaction, it's also about the data and what could we do with that data. For example, they partnered with Transport for London and the infrastructure providers for metro systems like Cubic Transportation to create a contactless payment system. So essentially an instant payment system. So in the past, when you wanted to use the tube, you needed to stand in line to buy an Oyster card. You'd add value to that card, and then you would use that to travel in the tube, excuse me. Instead, what they've done is you can skip the line for the Oyster card. You just take out your credit card, you tap it on the way in, and you tap it on the way out, and you have an instant transaction. Just eliminating the Oyster card saves TfL, Transport for London, £100 million annually. But MasterCard starts to realize, wait a minute, we could do things with that data because now we have a picture of how everybody's moving on the tube. And if we recombine that with other sources of data, we could actually become a data infrastructure provider. And if we could shift how people travel on the tube, we could save Transport for London £10 million for every 1% shift in peak demand. So if we were able to encourage people to travel earlier or later, we could save Transport for London a great deal of investment, and we could also save consumers a great deal of discomfort. And this is just one of many, many, many examples of new opportunities that they discover in data infrastructure, in digital IDs. So for example, they say, how could we separate the plastic from your credit card from the number and start attaching digital IDs to things? And then this whole concept of platforms, of connecting different users. And so for me, the Mastercard archetype is that for some companies, digital transformation is about all these new opportunities that are available to them in a digital world. But there's a second archetype that is very different, but that is also digital transformation that many of you will be familiar with, which is Aeroflot. And this is an example which is like many others. So the situation in Aeroflot in 2009, many of you, I imagine, flew on Aeroflot before 2009. Before that time period, it wasn't a very pleasant experience. I've heard some really bad stories of like the seats falling over on the plane, but basically they were in a very tough situation and they were out of money. They had a horrible reputation. They bring in this new CEO and his no airline experience, but IT experience. And his first big move is to change the uniforms. And that wouldn't give me a lot of confidence that things are changing. But if we fast forward to before COVID, what you see is this massive increase in passenger satisfaction, this return to profitability. And when we asked the CEO, what was that? What happened? He argued it was a digital transformation, that it was about adopting the back-end systems and automating their activities so that they could serve customers better. And here's the big point of the Aeroflot case. Aeroflot still does the exact same thing they did before digital transformation, which is fly people from, say, Paris to Moscow, but they do those activities better using digital tools. And they've gone from being one of the worst airlines to being one of the better airlines. So digital transformation, what does it mean? It means, like the Aeroflot case, doing the things you already do differently, but doing them better with digital tools. That means transforming the core and rethinking those activities. That means that digital transformation is something for almost everybody in the organization. But digital transformation also means, like the Mastercard case, doing new and different things, discovering new opportunities. And so for SMEs, I would argue that digital transformation will most often look more like Aeroflot, which is how do we do what we do better and serve customers better using digital tools? But it's important not to forget the Mastercard example, which is it's also about new opportunities. With that said, there are three tectonic shifts that I think are also important to pay attention to. The first is a shift from a world of mostly products to a world where platforms play an increasingly important role. By platforms, I mean like an Uber. It is the intermediary that facilitates the transaction between different groups. And platforms play a very important role in terms of coordinating commerce, generating data, and learning. And it's important to have a strategy in relation to platforms, whether that means creating your own platform or how you want to play with a platform. There's a shift from firms working in an isolated way to working with an ecosystem, meaning many partners. Why? Digital brings down the barriers to connect, transact, and interact. And so providing services and products increasingly requires cooperation with the other players in the ecosystem. And then lastly, a shift from what I would call traditional business models to digital business models, which said simply is just asking the question, what does digital allow us to do differently? And Andreas and Mathieu and Conrad mentioned some of the ways that businesses are adopting new business models. What have I said? I've said that digital transformation is about transforming the core of these organizations as well as pursuing new opportunities. And then I've mentioned that it's about paying attention to platforms, ecosystems, and digital business models. In conclusion, what can institutions do? Excuse me, that was for the timer there. What can institutions do? Training matters a lot because people have fear about what digital transformation means, and training can help these organizations see how they can take the next step. And often the next step is actually fairly small. You may end up in a very different place and a big transformation, but the first step is smaller. Facilitating the ecosystems that support digital, streamlining bureaucratic processes to make it easier to adopt digital tools. Case studies of SMEs adopting tools. It's incredibly powerful to see an example of somebody like you and be like, oh, I can do that too. Standard setting, so making it easier for processes and activities to connect and interact. Sponsoring platforms, so creating platforms, and this is something I've spoken to EU leaders about before. How do we help sponsor platforms that are amenable and beneficial to our businesses? And then lastly, leading the way yourselves and digitizing government, digitizing institutions can be very powerful. Thank you very much. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email if you have questions. I'm happy to share the slides with you.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for that terrific opening to our conversation today. I now want to zero in the focus a bit more on the Eastern Partner regions. So for that, I turn to my colleague Francesco Alfonso in the OECD Eurasia division, who will kind of set the scene ahead of the panel discussion, which will follow in a few moments. Francesco, please.
Thank you, Bill. I have to ask our colleagues to give me co-hosting rights because I cannot share my screen. Please. Should take 10 seconds. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, indeed, it's a bit hard to come just after Nathan's today, but I'll still try to do my best to do three things. I want to introduce some elements of context to our discussion. I want to share with you some initial evidence on the state of digitalization in the 6 countries of the Eastern Partnership, and I will also propose our approach to support governments to build a conducive policy environment for the digital transformation of SMEs in the context of our new EU for Business project. So first, very briefly, why working on digitalization? A lot has been said already. I just want to say a couple of things. On the one hand, digitalization is a driver of structural transformation. And this means, for instance, that new markets are being created and that the mix of skills demanded as well at the same time is changing. And at the same time, an important aspect to keep in mind is that digitalization does not only refers to the purely digital economy, but also, and I would say equally importantly, to the more incremental changes that are occurring in traditional sectors and businesses. So Mathieu, Conrad, everyone before me already spoke about how COVID has accelerated digitalization of businesses and governments. I just want to add to this introduction one last point that we should keep in mind is that technology is only half of the story, in the sense that the impact of digital on productivity is highly heterogeneous and is often visible only with a lag. And one important explanation for this is that hardware, and I should say also software, is not enough, and that firm performance only improves if technology adoption comes together with an openness to embrace a truly digital culture. So what is the current state of digital adoption in our region? We started to look at the available data, and in this chart, what you see for each technology in blue, you see the median values for OECD members for small, medium, and large enterprises. And in white, you see the data points for EAP countries where available. And we can already start observing some patterns. First, that smaller firms consistently lag in adoption compared to larger firms. Second, that the relative gaps between larger and smaller firms become more evident as technologies become more advanced, for instance, in the case of big data or artificial intelligence. And specifically for the Eastern Partner region, well, first, we still see that unfortunately, internationally comparable data is still scarcely available. And where it exists, the SME gap is confirmed, and that the region as a whole lags compared to OECD members for all enterprise size classes. Now, why are SME gaps important? There are a few points to be made here that largely build on the great work that my colleagues at the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship have recently published. I will mention a few. First, that digitalization is a driver of productivity growth, which in turn brings wage growth. And because of this, if there are gaps in adoption, this may also contribute to increasing inequalities among firms, peoples, and places. And second, even though one could think that integrating proven technologies could be faster and safer than testing new ones, and as a consequence, SMEs could grow fast by just catching up on the adoption gaps. However, we know that there are strong complementarities in technology diffusion. So this means that firms that are adopting, let's say, technology A are also more likely to adopt technology B. And what we see and what we know is that this complementarity increases with firm size. So in practice, larger firms are better able to step up to new technology environment, and as such, they can better reap the benefits of digitalization as early adopters. So what can then governments do to accompany SMEs in their digital transformation and try to mitigate digital divides? An important aspect here is to recognize that technology, as I said, is only one part of the picture, and that a true digital transformation of SMEs requires a digital culture to drive technology adoption. This means that starting with increasing awareness of digital solution, adapting business processes to the increased availability of data, the depth of customer insight that is made available by digital, and the speed of market interactions. But it also requires digital acumen on the side of entrepreneurs to spot new business models and building the necessary safeguards to ensure privacy and security. And this is especially true in smaller firms where the digital uptake relies heavily on the entrepreneurial orientation, the innovation capacity, and the perception of potential risks and benefits of SME managers. So with this EU for Business project, we want to look at the overall framework condition for the digital economy in the region. So that would include connectivity, market openness, and skills, but we will also have a strong focus on the specific policy measures that governments and SME agencies can put in place to support SME digitalization. And in particular, our project, we want to build on the understanding that financial and technical support needs to be complemented with the training and guidance on the skill sets and the organizational changes that are required to drive technological evolution. So with that said, we started to look at some aspects of the framework conditions for the digital economy, and we look at two aspects, broadband connectivity and skills. Perhaps in the interest of time, I will just say a couple of things about skills. And so here, what we see is that in the region, digital literacy trails OECD and EU countries. And in particular, only 20% of the population in the Eastern Partner region can perform tasks that are associated with standard digital skills. For instance, using spreadsheets or downloading, installing software. And to compensate for this, companies can play a role and can provide dedicated training to their employees. But here again, we observe quite significant gaps between larger and smaller firms. And the same digital training divide is observed across countries, and which is likely to be even more evident in the EAP region. Unfortunately, we only have data for Ukraine here. So we will continue researching on these topics in the context of our project, but for now, I think I can stop here, and over to you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Francesco. We move now to our panel discussion. I do see one hand up, provided it is very short and perhaps a specific point addressed to you or to Nathan. Larissa Schreckenbach, did you have a question, an immediate question? The hand has gone down, so perhaps it was just a mistake. In that case, we can shift now to a very few minutes of open discussion. I do want to come to our panel, but if there are questions or comments on what we've heard, I think it's fair to pause for folk. We've had two quite rich introductory presentations. I see no hands, I see nothing in the chat, but there will be plenty of time as the event unfolds. So perhaps we turn to our first round of panelists. I have to say that unfortunately, Deputy Minister Bornyakov of Ukraine is unable to join us today. We had hoped up until the last minute that he might, although the reason is one that we have to say we welcome, because in fact Ukraine today launches its new state agency of entrepreneurship and export development, that is to say its own SME agency, and we've done a lot of work on SMEs with Ukraine. We do a lot of work with agencies through the region, and we see this as potentially quite an important step forward. So with that in mind, I pass first to Mrs. Mariam Lashki, Member of Parliament on the Education and Science Committee in Georgia. And I would like to ask you briefly to share a few thoughts on the importance of developing digital skills and human capital for the digitalization of businesses and industry in Georgia.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me start the words with expressing appreciation to our dear friends. I'm very glad to see so many familiar faces, and I hope that soon we'll be able to meet face to face, host you in Tbilisi, or visit anywhere in the world. So COVID-19, I would say it's a black swan of last 2 years, has transformed the globe into an agile, structured enterprise. 195 countries, those who are acting like 195 startups, are competing to each other, and those who are having the less bureaucracy and are early adopters, those who adjust to the new reality and accelerating the digitalization, are succeeding. Today, I wanted to just highlight two issues which are very important in SME ICT absorption, as well as the cornerstone of digital transformation, which is the cybersecurity and private data. So one thing I wanted to highlight from Georgian perspective, as you know, I've been, in my background, I was representing Georgia's Innovation Technology Agency and wanted to highlight one flagship project, which will be useful for other countries as well to share this knowledge and experience, which also has accelerated the digital skills and the human capital. This flagship project was aiming to develop the platform, and as it was mentioned by our colleague Nathan Foor from ESED, our keynote speaker, useful is the development of the platform as the facilitating process of linking at least two parties. And this Broadband for Development platform has on the one hand integrated the ISPs, the internet service providers, with their packages, as well as integrated the MSMEs, as well as individuals, those who wanted to be connected to the internet. And also this platform was aiming to raise the digital skills. So through this project, Georgia was able to raise the awareness about digital transformation, as well as raise the concrete skills absorbing and adapting to these platforms. So the Broadband for Development project was supported by the World Bank, project, and it was a good practice on how the skills have to be kind of adapted to the current challenges. On the other side, the cornerstone of digital transformation, which is the cybersecurity and the private data, is we see that in last decades the investment in this direction has been grown, but still in so many countries are the chaos because there is no concrete policy statement on this direction. So I want to again express appreciation to OECD as well as the programs like EU for Digital, EU for Business, which are harmonizing, and also HDM, the harmonization of digital markets, which are on the one hand harmonizing the regulatory framework for digital transformation, including the private data security, including GDPR and all kind of followed regulations to develop the policy measures in each of the countries and harmonize them. On the other side, it's useful to also develop the digital skills because we see so many disruptive professions and we see so many things are being disrupted in today's world because of these accelerated processes. And in this direction, initiating the technical assistance and trainings program is very useful in order to have the right skills in the country and right skills in the regions as well. And third thing is the partnership in order to kind of harmonize the standards, in order to share experience and have this sharing and caring concept to each other. So in order us to be harmonized to each other, to have this one digital single market in each of the countries and have these skills absorbed as well as develop the familiar and similar regulatory framework. From this, I just wanted to have this, and I would be happy to have the concrete discussions through the questions, but once again want to express my appreciation, express my readiness in my role from the regulatory body to support and contribute in the process of further developing the digital economy in all of our countries. So thank you once again, and looking forward for further discussion and questions.
Thank you very much for an excellent opening and also for your brevity. I do hope all the panelists will kind of keep their initial replies to my questions short, because I hope we'll be able to have another round or two of questions from the audience when all of you can speak up again in response to participants' questions. We now turn to Armenia, to Mr. Haik Aslanyan, who is advisor to the Minister of High-Tech Industry. And he's going to tell us a bit about the ministry's vision for digitalizing business and industry in Armenia, and in particular, the kind of main policy interventions the ministry is engaged in. Mr. Aslanyan, please.
Thank you very much for this great initiative. I am Haik Aslanyan, advisor of Minister of High-Tech Industry of Armenia, and I am on digitalization agenda and cybersecurity framework as well. The digitalization is a key priority for Armenia government. Over the years, Armenia has developed its ICT sector, which now counts more than 7% of the country's GDP. The Ministry of High-Tech Industry is the executive authority to develop and implement the digital transformation policy in Armenia. Very recently, we have adopted the national strategy on digital transformation of Armenia. And digitalization of the private sector is one of the key areas of this strategy and priority for the ministry. So we have been working on this strategy when the COVID-19 outbreak took place. The emergency situation has urged us, in addition to the long-term strategy goals, to undertake short-term and immediate actions, which would help to minimize the shock that the economy was experiencing. So the ministry has incorporated into the action plans immediate instrument encouraging the use of digital solutions in private sector, and especially among the small and medium enterprises. So, sorry, I have allergy, that's why I'm counting. Currently, the goal of the ministry is to capitalize on the success and on the change of people's behavior. So I hope that today's discussion will help us to foster the digital transformation process in our economy. And of course, the digitalization is only a tool to reach our goals. It's not the goal itself. So we thank you very much again, and we are looking forward to our further cooperation with all our stakeholders and colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now for a private sector perspective, I want to turn to Ms. Anne Biolac, the Vice President at Capgemini Invent. A woman with over 25 years experience consulting in this sector, advising firms on aspects of the digital transformation. What does it mean from your perspective when you're working with clients? What does it mean for a company to digitalize? What are the key enablers and perhaps the challenges that companies don't anticipate until they get into this process? You seem to be muted.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So digitalization is really about a new way to do business. And what I think is really important is that most of the time we consider that what is important is just really to digitalize front office, you know, the products, the services and everything. But when you consider about a digitalization project, you really need into account both front office and back office, because otherwise you will never be a full digital actors. So if we talk about the enablers or maybe the key success factors for a good digitalization, I will say first that what I suggest my clients to do is first to have a vision. Digitalization is not an objective. It's just a mean. So you do this because you want to be different. You want to do a business differently. You want to be more productive. You want to do some savings. You want to address new clients and everything. So it's really first to think about what is really important for you in terms of digitalization. First, secondly, is also you need to start small. When you start a digitalization transformation, you should not think about doing everything. But what is really important all the time is just to take some end-to-end processes and not to do only one part of a process, because otherwise it will be really a failure for the company. So small, but really end-to-end is really what is really, really important for a company to do this. After, but as it was mentioned, digitalization is not only about tech. Of course, it's about tech, but when you are doing a digital transformation project, you need to consider that 3 elements will be very key. The first one is who, so it will be about people and culture, because if you don't embark these people in this transformation, it will be a failure. So it's really important, and I will talk about this because it's really important that people feel engaged in this project. 2 is about the processes, the business model and everything. You need to think what you want to do. And after, it's about tech. But it's only finally the end of the issues that you need to do. After, I think that what is also really important is to adopt what I call a zero-based budget approach. You need to take the digitalization project as the opportunity to rethink your organization, really to renew, to optimize your processes and everything. Because it's as when you are doing outsourcing, you will not outsource processes that are not very clean, that are not perfect and everything. It's the same for digitalization. So you need to be clear that your processes, your value proposition will be completely rethought and redesigned just to be sure to deliver a good value on this. After, I think that what is good when you launch a digital project today is that you can use some standard solutions. At the beginning, you had to redo everything. You had to design your own solution. But today on the market, thanks to these ecosystems that Nathan was mentioning in this presentation, you have a lot of solution already existing. Many startups are today proposing some finance, HR, platforms and everything that can accelerate this. And this is a great opportunity. So really companies need to use all these services. After, I think that also just to be sure to embark people is that you need to solve pain points. You need to be sure that your digitalization will enable people to work more easily in your company, that it will make their life, yes, easier and everything. And this is really important. So your project should be employee focused, client focused, but really thinking about what I want to solve. And after, I think that it's also the opportunity to attract new talents. So it's really, really important. It's a way also to train your employees, to transform the culture of your company. And if you do all this, I think it could be a good project for you.
Thank you very much. I now turn to Mr. David Solok, who's a board member of the Platform of the Industry of the Future in Poland. Your platform supports companies in Poland that are trying to adjust to the digital world and the digital transformation. And in particular, you're running a network of digital hubs, digital innovation hubs. I wonder, from your experience, what are the chief barriers companies face as they try to transform and make the transition to Industry 4.0?
Well, in the beginning, I would like to thank OECD for invitation for this important webinar. And before I will shortly answer to your question, I would like to say a few words about the Future Industry Platform. Well, we are one of 19 national platform organizations that supports in Europe transforming the national economy into the Industry 4.0. Our government decided that in times of rapid transformation, there is a need to create an institution that will coordinate, accelerate, and sometimes initiate the digital development. The task of such entities like the Future Industry Platform is to build an ecosystem to stimulate the market and accelerate the digital transformation while cooperating with the government, with NGOs, and with the business institutions. And when it comes to the barriers of the digital transformation, we are still examining them in Poland and getting to know them better with the development of new projects. The financial barrier is one of the most frequent barriers among the entrepreneurs. We are constantly working to evangelize the market on this issue, as we know that 80% of companies note the high financial costs of transformation in the first phase, but at the same time, 82% of managers emphasize cost optimization as the main visible benefit of digitalization. Another huge problem is defining the right strategies, while those that arise are very often characterized by a small range and low detail. The problem is not that digital transformation is not achieving the business goals, but it is not meeting the goals that company cares about the most. This is one of the issues on which we advise entrepreneurs on ongoing basis. A good example, a good practical example is general problem concerning our business environment institutions among the digital maturity audit, which shows the digital deficits in a company. The business institutions have a big problems in standardized methodology. We as the Future Industry Platform are planning to teach them, the business institutions the use of ADMA methodology that we are practicing. Another important barrier is the mental barrier. Employees of companies undergoing transformation may be unfavorable to change, including fear for their further employment. This is reflected in the research we made together with one of the institutes in Poland, where 56% of Poles consider the digital technologies as the opportunity for humanity, but a similar part of Polish society, 58%, is concerned that private data is used to influence their decisions, and 63% of them indicate the possible negative impact of new technology for people's physical and mental health. Well, these were three main barriers that we have that we identify as the future industry platform in Poland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we move from one David to another, because I'd now like to ask my OECD colleague, David Girten of the OECD's Directorate for Science, Technology and Innovation, to tell us a bit about the OECD's Going Digital framework. In particular, it looks at all sorts of different areas of policy to ensure a holistic approach. How does the framework help us to design policies to support the digital transformation? How can it be of use to the EAP economies? Please.
Thanks very much. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the OECD's approach to help governments achieve a holistic digital transformation policy approach, which was developed in a large horizontal project. Just a little bit of background at the OECD, where we had a lot of OECD committees working together on developing this approach called the Going Digital project. And as Bill mentioned, one important outcome from this was the Going Digital Integrated Policy Framework, as well as the Going Digital Toolkit, which we designed to help governments achieve coherence in the different types of policies that are important for digital transformation. Now, we've witnessed in the previous interventions already, digital transformation affects the whole economy and society. And so this is really what made us sort of come up with this approach and with this framework. And how does it help? How does it do it? A first crucial thing is the framework brings together all the policy areas that are affected by and are affecting digital transformation within seven policy dimensions that you should see here on the screen. And do let me know if that's not the case. Access, use, innovation, jobs, society, trust, and market openness. And each of these dimensions contains 5 to 7 more specific policy areas. There's almost 14 total that are grouped in a way to help governments enhance coordination across these policy areas and across these 7 dimensions. So the rationale for this framework is to, rather than addressing policy issues that we see popping up across all sorts of different policy areas, rather than addressing these separately and in policy silos, to address them jointly and in particular across the different policy areas that need coordination. Now, and maybe just to say that many governments are doing this practically by developing a national digital strategy. We heard today already of an example of that. SMEs more specifically are present in different dimensions and policy areas. The dimensions here that mainly touch on SMEs are use, innovation, and trust, but also access and market openness contain a lot of crucial policies that affect SMEs' digital transformation. So I won't have the time to walk you through all the dimensions here, but I just want to illustrate real quick here what you see on the screen, what this toolkit offers to governments to help to use the framework and use it as a tool to help them develop their own holistic policy approach. So if I go just on one of those dimensions here, what you get is a selection of key indicators that help the country monitor where it stands and compare to other countries. and you get a depth of data here. If you click on any of those, where you can look into breakdowns, here you can, for example, look into different sections. This is about e-commerce, this indicator, and you can, get time series for all the countries that we cover here. We provide also for each of those dimensions policy insights and analysis, key publications on the topics that are relevant here in the case for market openness by the OECD, as well as policy guidance, high-level recommendations that are very important, and principles, but also very hands-on guidance. Just an example here, we have these toolkit notes where we look at specific issues, consumer data and competition here, and look at what countries are doing to address these issues effectively. And if you come from a specific country's perspective, what we offer as well is basically sort of look at what is the most crucial data you need to consider to get an overview where you stand for all these countries that are covered here, and an overview on the key indicators. Then we have a tool that helps you compare all these indicators to any of the countries we have, and to average, obviously. We draw out leading and lagging indicators for each country. That gives you a snapshot of some strengths and opportunities to catch up, and then time series data for each of those policy dimensions. Now, last thing to mention, there's themes that cut across all these different dimensions, and we've grouped them here under the themes angle. And there's obviously, as you can imagine, one on SMEs, and so you could also go here and explore the key indicators that are relevant for SMEs, again, policy insights and guidance. And so this is one resource that we developed to help countries put this framework into practice. We're also doing national reviews where you can go into much more depth analysis and development of specific policy recommendations to help put into practice this framework. And I'm happy to discuss any of this in more detail. That's this just in a few words as an overview from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. I should at this point just mention that the slides you've been seeing will all be available to be circulated. And of course, the link to the tool that David was discussing will be there. Thanks to all of our panelists for great discipline on time. That gives us about a quarter of an hour for some more open discussion with the panelists, questions from the floor, from other panelists, from other speakers, for anybody in the room who wishes to make a brief point or raise a question to one of our speakers. I see Mathieu Bousquet. Bousquet has wasted no time putting his hand up. Mathieu, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers for their fascinating contributions. It's more the question maybe to Nathan and to Anne. I mean, what we are really interested in is in ensuring that the policies are supportive of this digital transformation. And you mentioned, of course, that this is coming very much from the SMEs themselves. And I mean, from the CEO, from a design, a vision of the SME. So how do we ensure that the policy that we want to support, the policy set by the government, is really creating this change, is really is not a paper exercise, but is really bringing change and is favoring this digital shift, digital culture and digital transformation?
Thank you for that. I'm looking for Nathan, but if others want to speak up as well.
Should I answer?
Please.
Yeah, sorry, I think I was still in mute. I have some problem. I wanted to be sure that I will not be. No, I really think that what is first important is to develop the talent pool. So I think that one of the first policy for me should be a human-centric policy, because most of the time we realize that what is missing for companies is to have access to the right people, to the right talent, to the right skills and everything. And after, it's also linked to this, it's also to be sure that the right talents will stay locally. So in France, for example, we know that a lot of our talents are moving to the US or to other countries and everything because of more attractive remuneration or projects and everything. So I think it's really, for me, it's the first part of the digitalization, as I was mentioning, is about people. So we need to be sure that we keep our talents there, that we develop the right schools, that we develop the right environment to keep them. And after, I think it's also about, as Nathan was mentioning, creating the right ecosystem. Because I think it's really also by sharing some experience, by having access to right solutions and everything, that we will be able to accelerate this development. Because most of the time you are doing things by learning, by seeing some other examples and everything. So for me, it's also about investing in startups that will help the digitalization of other more traditional companies. And it's also about putting some money. And because most of the time we realize that in Europe, we are good at investing is early stage company, but not keeping them after when they are growing up and that when the solutions can be really mainframe. So for me, it's also important to invest in local companies and startups. I think that really for me will be the key policy elements that need to be developed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I see also a hand up. I want to pass the floor to an OECD colleague who works under the Committee for Digital Economy Policy, Andras Hlaš. Please, Andras.
Thank you very much, William, and good morning, maybe good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Thank you very much for this panel discussion and the keynote speech before. Very, very interesting. And I think that the panelists have well described those enabling factors for digital transformation of businesses, such as trust, security, and their issues around market access, fair competition that can help a successful digital transformation. This is what the Committee on Digital Economy Policy, CDEP, and its working parties are working on by assessing economy's performance with respect to digitalization and examine, some of the most pressing policy challenges in areas spanning from, as mentioned, human-centric approaches to the trustworthiness of disruptive technologies, very important, from broadband or access to digital infrastructures to digital security and to legal frameworks. What we see at the OECD as one of the biggest added value to all these efforts, and one of the most important tools, is the involvement of a wide range of stakeholders, as we see here at the panel as well, since nobody knows everything, but everybody knows something. And it's always worth sharing these experiences and these ideas, these insights, in order to come to better solutions. For the sake of time, I would like to just raise a couple of very short questions to the panelists. One is that we saw how the coronavirus pandemic has triggered digitalization of companies who have not necessarily been known as digital sensitive entities before, like Walmart, where some highly digitalized companies like Amazon have struggled at the first half of last year. And we also know that COVID-19 has urged SMEs to open doors and embrace digital technologies. But the question is, what about SMEs after the COVID-19? How can your governments help SMEs to keep up their interest in digital transformation and not get back to the old normality, if you like? And how can, of course, OECD and the Committee on Digital Economy Policy help you in that? The second question, if I may, is on interregional cooperation. We saw today one region and the problems of one region, very important issues there. As Mariam Laksh has pointed out, sharing and using experiences is very, very important. So the question is, when it comes to the OECD and its regional programs, the sharing of experience with other regional programs is something that might be very important. And in this sense, the OECD Going Digital Integrated Policy Framework and Toolkit, as David Geerten has pointed out, is an excellent platform to check where are the main dimensions of the digital transformation and compare one country's status with others or to others. The last one, if I may say, is with regard to the national digital strategies, with a growing emphasis on digital security. As Haik Ashlanyan mentioned it very importantly. I mean, we saw just recently how hospitals pipelines, and other very important infrastructures have been attacked throughout the world. And this raises the important question, what can governments do in order to face these kind of challenges and attacks, and how can they protect their own citizens, their important basic infrastructures, in order to keep up the productivity and keep up the digital and the non-digital services as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andras. I'm gonna step in there before the panelists come back, because those are huge questions. I think since there's just one other hand up, I'll ask Jean-Jacques Kudela to make a comment or raise his question with the panelists, and then we will go back to you for your responses. Jean-Jacques.
Yes, thank you, William. I wanted just to say something about digitalization in general here, policies of digitalization. I'm preaching digitalization for about 25 years, and I've changed progressively my mind, because we are supposed to work for SMEs, first of all, here in this panel. And we consider the digitalization as a panacea, and we're pushing all the SMEs through the same system here. I think we should think about the destruction also of SMEs because of digitalization. So what we have now, new generations thinking that what does not exist on the internet doesn't exist at all. And I don't see the necessity for a butcher shop, for a plumber, for a lot of activities which are not realized on the internet to be pushed, forced, compulsory, obliged, so to say, to digitalize their existence in general. So I think there should be policies making addressing different levels of digitalization, and not pushing to a full digitalization, which is not linked to the real activity. And first of all, the SMEs need visibility, improving their visibility. And this is the very first level of digitalization, except for the equipment to manage their activity inside. But it's sufficient here. And what we see in general is something which is pushing all the SMEs into a mechanism which are forcing them to buy equipment and buy software, which is not linked to the real activity. So here I think that the governments are here responsible for addressing properly the different levels of digitalization. This is not a panacea. I share here opinion of Anne Bulak that it's also simply a mean. This means not a target. Behind of that, we have a lot of companies selling equipment, selling software, or selling consultancy, like myself, for instance.
Thank you so much. And now we come back to the panelists. I don't know who might want to jump in there. Certainly, I see Mariam raising a hand. Please.
So first of all, thank you very much for the very interesting questions. I'll be highlighting some of the parts. So first of all, Andres, what we'll be doing when the COVID-19 is over. Hopefully it will be soon. But first of all, I guess this is not the destination where we arrived because road, and it's not the temporary place where we are being at the current stage. Now, this is the place where and the destination where we'll be coming after 5-10 years, and this is the continuous process, so we'll not be returning back. Well, what we have to do to keep this keep the digitalization process smoothly and keep this energy is the programs, incentives, and the standards. And one thing is the mindset. I guess from all of this, the first of all is the digital mindset, which the community is developing, and the digital behavior, which we all are developing. This has become part of all our lives, and it's not just for a few people, right? So I guess this is the first thing is the government should keep the programs open, because it doesn't have to be like a temporary program for digitalization, giving the grants. It has to still continue this way in order to keep this process, and also the mindset development which the community will be developing. Second one, regarding the sharing and joint initiatives, I have to also say that I'm also a PhD candidate. I'm doing my PhD in digital Silk Road and the role of IFIs. And the core principle and concept of it is that like the OECD and other kind of organizations have to offer the joint projects. Like I remember when working at the World Bank, we were having the CASA 2000. The project was called this way. So it was for kind of Asian countries. The idea was that all of these countries have to harmonize in one single standard, and similar type of project have to be transformed to the digital to a digital instrument, and harmonizing the digital single European digital single market to the whole, for instance, CASA 200 or whatever we can call it, to one single market. So when the standards, when we are sitting together and OECD and other organizations are setting up the standards, setting up the kind of a policy measures, and we have to have on the table the policy makers in order to implement all of those recommendations to have the similar standards. Third one was regarding the security, and there have been several attacks, not only in Armenia, but also in other countries. What we have to do is to pay more and more attention to it, put more investment in this direction, including the secured cloud systems, including the kind of cyber exercises to the staff members of the government officials as well, and also the kind of the security instruments, like the infrastructure has to be in place. Definitely, I'll be turning back to the labor force, which has to again be raised, and more cyber education has to be integrated in education as well as a mandatory kind of the system as well. I guess I could not kind of get correctly Mr. Jean-Jacques' question regarding the policy of not digitalizing, but again, this is the kind of the lifelong exercise of digitalizing, and this process has to be supported by the government, supported by the community, and the awareness raising, including kind of companies' involvement with the infrastructure, with new software development, has to be part of this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know if other panelists want to come back on those. I also saw Bin Hoa from the European Union had his hand up briefly and then it went down. He might want to come in afterwards. But first, if anyone wants to add to that, obviously there's some big questions on the table. Either of the Davids or Haik Aslanyan.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I'll be short. One of the most important aspects is cybersecurity, as you mentioned, and it should be developed a step behind before this digitalization. It should be prevention action, not the result. And of course, also, as I mentioned, government of Armenia is supporting small and medium enterprises in digitalization. And also, I want to ask to share with us also the negative impact as well of digitalization. As David mentioned, there are a lot of cases about negative impact. And also it would be great to share among us to prevent such cases in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm looking, I don't see if other panelists want to come back on that. Otherwise, David Gierten has raised his hand. David, please.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick, a couple of points on Andres asked, what about SMEs after the crisis, how to help them, and Jean-Jacques also mentioned that not all SMEs necessarily benefit from digital. I think these are two really crucial points, and from the policy perspective, I think it's really important to get a disaggregated and fine-grained understanding of what SMEs in the countries are lacking. We talked a lot about skills and technologies. There's also other complementary investments needed. And there are some common challenges, but certainly the priorities will not be the same in every country. I think that's what's one important thing to always keep in mind. And to really get to understanding the real opportunities for specific types of SMEs, be it in sectors, be it in certain ecosystems in the countries, identify them right, and then evaluate the policies that are in place to understand to what extent do they already either improve the fundamentals that need to be in place, or specifics that help SMEs on specific opportunities that are there. So I just wanted to pick that up, and because I gave this very high level overview, and reinforce that point of the importance that there's no silver bullet on SMEs as such. It's just a firm size, and there's a lot of specificities that policymakers, I think, need to go into to understand in the country, and obviously also below the national level, at the subnational level.
Thanks, David. I see Hoabin Ajemian has raised his hand again. And then we'll have to move on, but I'd like to hear from you, and then I want to come back to Nathan before we move on to the poll and the next session. Bin, please.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Bill. Thank you for all the speakers. It's very, very interesting. I mean, I learned a lot, and in particular, and he brought food for thought about how to support building better strategies to support digitalization. Maybe I had one specific question to Anne, and one of the specificity that we have in the Eastern Partnership is that we have a large pool of engineers. I mean, highly skilled engineers, whether in physics, chemistry, and mathematics, but we really don't see the pipeline of startup. I mean, the ecosystem building, and we know, on the other hand, that there's a lack of engineers in Europe. And one of the vision of the European Union working together with Eastern Partnership is to support economic integration, and there's clearly a win-win. Would you coming from the private sector, how would you see this complementarity and the digitalization process as SMEs supporting this integration at the same time through the digitalization of the ecosystem? Thank you.
I'll come back to Anne on that, because I know Anne is time constrained and will have to leave us very shortly.
No, but I really think it's really important, and I really think that Europe has to think about sharing the capabilities across the countries and everything, and not trying to reinvent in every country. And I think it's sometimes one of the issue of all this view of single countries. We have the opportunity really to build a large community, and I really think it will be really key to give access to all these skills and capabilities across. It was part of the collaboration between all the countries, because I really think it's important for me. We will win if really we can just promote all the skills and talents that we have across Europe.
Thank you very much. And now I wanted to bring Nathan back round, perhaps for some reflections, in particular on the question we began with from Mathieu Bousquet, which is what governments can do to ensure that, on the one hand, it really does make business sense for firms. It responds to Jean-Jacques Coudela's point that it's not an end in itself, that policies are supporting businesses in doing things that they should be doing and not just pushing them down a path. But at the same time, really favoring a shift to a digital culture and a transformation rather than just bolting on gimmicks.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I apologize, I wasn't here when I was asked it. I was tied to the physical world. I had to run down and pick up a package delivery 4 floors. I just barely missed it. But so physical does still matter as much as digital. Let me say that in my view, when I gave the Aeroflot archetype, so transforming businesses so that they can do what they do better using digital tools, to me, that is going to be the bar for entry in future competition. That's going to be really critical. And so coming back to the question of what governments really do, I am a massive believer in the power of ecosystems. Now, we've used the word ecosystems in different ways. So Anne's comments were excellent, and she talked about working with an ecosystem of partners, say, for example, startups offering useful tools. But let me use it in a different way. I mean the ecosystem that supports the emergence of digital capabilities and digital businesses. these things matter. They matter over a long time scale. So for example, you can hear from my accent that although I'm an aspiring EU citizen, I didn't grow up in the EU. I grew up in the US. The Kauffman Foundation in the US has been a long-running effort to promote entrepreneurship. And they studied the emergence of ecosystems that supported entrepreneurship. And I noted that one of the states that was really poor, where my wife's family happens to come from, where the governments and institutions proactively worked to build the institutions to support entrepreneurship, over decades, went from being one of the least entrepreneurial states to one of the most entrepreneurial states, and having multiple billion-dollar startups. I mean, I watched it firsthand over the course of decades, this transformation. So these infrastructure ecosystem building efforts matter. They matter over the long scale. At the same time, a lack of coordination and activity also matters. And I have been in closed door forums with some of Europe's leading CEOs talking about the dilemma that China and the US have large platforms like an Amazon or Google, and Europe has far fewer of those. And so what are the and I know many of you are actively thinking about these questions, and I encourage you to do so. How do we encourage platforms that support our businesses and maybe recognize the monopolistic nature of some of these other platforms? And so it's all about how do we create this environment? And so my last word would simply to be say that these efforts do matter. I appreciate what David said in particular and what Anne said, but I am a huge believer in creating capabilities that, as Francisco is mentioning, like, what's the gap between the capabilities we have today and the capabilities we want to have? Small steps. This is possible, and we can create the environment for this to happen.
Thank you for that. We now pause to find out what everybody in the room is thinking, to find out what we as a group think, because we do have a poll. It's an instant poll, just a couple of questions, not very onerous, and all of your responses are strictly anonymous, so you can say what you think if we can get the poll loaded up. And give you a few moments to absorb the questions. We might leave the poll up and continue the conversation in a moment, but at least we'll pause here to have a look.
Are multiple answers possible?
Yes. I suggest not more than, I always choose not more than two, otherwise it ceases to be a very revealing exercise. But yes, multiple answers are possible. While you're absorbing that, I will allow one commentary on what Nathan was saying, because I used to work a lot on rural development. And one of the challenges for rural small and medium firms is the thinness of the ecosystem. Cities tend to have much lower barriers to entry for startups and small firms. Rural SMEs tend to be more productive if they survive because they just face higher hurdles. And digitalization is helping to relax a lot of those. At the same time, many of these rural businesses have very traditional business models, which is fair enough. As Jean-Jacques Coudela was saying, it's not about everybody going wholly digital in every way. But I think it's important to recognize that there are some opportunities that open up there to enrich an ecosystem through greater connectivity. And Jean-Jacques has his hand up, so I'll let Jean-Jacques speak briefly, and then we perhaps will close the poll and move on.
You see, William, that's exactly the point I wanted to raise, exactly what you said, because we're focusing on structures instead of focusing on products. Never forget that this SMEs is meant to sell products. And when we, in the way we're thinking always about platforms, which means e-commerce in general. But when you're a solid SME selling for 20 years tomatoes and the concepts of mushrooms and things like that, you don't have a product you can distribute as simple. So you don't enter this system. Of course, some aspects of your production, of your economic activity has to be or could be digitalized, so to say. But this is not a religion here. We have to think about this, because the world is not made of factories, startups, companies, and so on. If we're supporting SMEs, we're supporting first very small companies surviving every day and selling very small things on the next corner market. That's the reality. I can tell you, I can give you some example of things I've seen.
I think
abroad.
Yeah, no, I know, and I should mention others. Jean-Jacques participated in other events recently, and it was an excellent presentation. But we do need to move on.
Simply, William, just one point. I'm leading two evaluations at the moment for the EU in two very different countries, Tajikistan and Morocco, at the same time with two different teams, and we are coming to similar conclusions of many points regarding SMEs and digitalization.
Okay. Perhaps we can quickly see what we thought if the poll results are available. If not, we might move on and we'll pause a little bit later in the discussion, but here we are. So you can kind of scroll down at your leisure and see, but on the first question, the main obstacles SMEs face, financing, not surprisingly, comes out first, but with multiple choice options, it's clear that we all see multiple issues to address there. And in terms of policy solutions, actually a similar dispersal. This may look a bit dull because the results are so close, but in fact, that's what I find interesting. We run these polls in many of our webinars, and sometimes it becomes absolutely clear that there are one or two things that everybody in the room sees as priorities and the others less. Here we have a much broader agenda identified by the participants, much more cross-cutting. And now we move into our next round of discussion. I thank the panelists who are on the screen for the moment and those who've joined in the discussion. And I want to pass the floor now to Mr. Orhan Mamadov, the chairman of Azerbaijan's SME Development Agency, to hear a little bit about the agency's plans regarding implementation of its targeted support programs. What do you have in the pipeline for Azerbaijan's SMEs?
Thank you, William. Dear panel members and participants, firstly, on behalf of Small and Medium Business Development Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan, please accept my sincere gratitude for your kind invitation to this important event. Azerbaijan has sound business relations with OECD, and we extend our profound appreciation for the continuous support and cooperation. The government of Azerbaijan is currently developing a new socio-economic strategy under the national priorities for year 2030, which of course includes SME digitalization. Therefore, today's event, I think, is a good opportunity for us to exchange ideas about views undertaken or planned in EU partner countries to further improve and strengthen our digital agenda. Micro and small and medium business are considered to be main driving forces of the modern economy, and the level of their adoption of digital technologies is an indicator of the level of innovative development in the country as a whole. In this respect, we acknowledge the importance of digitalization of SMEs, which has always been an integral part of our activities. To some extent, the recent global COVID-19 pandemic made digitalization efforts of SMEs necessary for their sustainability and survival, of course. At the same time, it presented an opportunity for companies to come up with new innovative solutions to improve their businesses, their business condition, as well as to ensure business continuity during these difficult times. Since the establishment of our agency in Azerbaijan, we have defined the following main strategic pillars. It's first of all, improve access to finance, market and knowledge, as well as enabling business environment in our country. Considering the new post-COVID
realities, SME digitalization became new across CAT development agenda, and our efforts in relation to SME digitalization are mainly reflected through our support programs as well as knowledge and infrastructure platforms. We have already introduced various government support mechanisms to promote innovation and digitalization for our SMEs. This includes our grant programs for internal market studies, research and development programs, as well as tax incentives through startup certificates. There are also different thematic industrial technologies park we have, including high technologies that support and promote development of digital economy, while offering privilege to their residents and serving as a plug-and-play place. We have also introduced new SME development centers to improve access of local SMEs to knowledge and skills and innovation. These centers provide business consultancies and trainings to SMEs, including on innovative businesses, while serving as an incubator facility. We have recently launched an e-learning platform for these activities, and through introducing such platforms, our aim is to communicate more effectively with SMEs, improve service quality and coverage. Another flagship views is the small and medium business houses that we have. SMB houses are one-stop shops offering all G2B services from one location, including some B2B services as well, with a new view to be introduced soon, which is e-SMB house platform. They would turn to non-stop shop format, offering the services online and making it more accessible to SMEs. Additionally, in the pipeline, we have the development of a new e-commerce portal designed primarily to sell products and services of SMEs through a single online platform. And through this platform, our goal is to support the development of e-commerce, encourage SMEs to take advantage of online sales opportunities, both within the country and to promote sales of their products overseas. Finally, it's my pleasure to inform you about our new technical assistance project started recently by OECD within the support of EU on promoting SME digitalization in our country. Within this project, it's expected by the end of this year to finalize diagnostic review and provide recommended policy actions to further promote SME digitalization in Azerbaijan. Our agency is happy, of course, to be counterpart of this important program, important view, and using opportunity. I want to thank both OECD and EU for their support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And now I want to turn to a recent piece of OECD work. The organization has recently published an important piece of work on the digital transformation of SMEs. And I would like to ask Ms. Sandrine Kerrouche, Head of Unit in the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities, to share its main findings with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will share my screen and the presentation now. Voilà. Can you all see my screen? Yes, can we start?
Yes, please, very well.
So when we talk about digitalization, we are actually discussing different type of technology and different form of application. And if we start, for instance, with the online platform, which we already discussed in the previous session, what is the value added of this platform? The value added of this platform is to connect users. This helps them to access more information, to access more market, eventually abroad. It helps them to reduce the cost and asymmetry of information. This is also a way for them, for the users to access business intelligence services that are provided by the platform themselves. Let's take another example, cloud computing, for instance. What is the benefit of cloud computing? Is to be able to raise IT capacity at very low cost, because firms, SMEs, small firms can access pay-as-you-go services. So without the investment upfront, without the cost of maintenance, and with regular update of the services. So this is a way for them to operate a technology leapfrog and to access frontier technology and digital services. Now let's take another example, artificial intelligence, for instance. What is the benefit of artificial intelligence? It's to increase the capacity of the firms for predictions and automation. It helps them with the data available to increase market segmentation, to increase their capacity to differentiate their product and services. And what is one of the main competitive tools for small firms is precisely to provide more of product differentiation, more of product customization. So artificial intelligence is a way for them as well to better anticipate fluctuation, for instance, the fluctuation in prices, so fluctuations in prices of commodities or intermediaries. And it's also a way for them to automate some services, and there are already some forms that are very spread, like the chatbot, for instance, where firms, instead of having someone answering basic question, could have this form of artificial intelligence addressing a large volume of question and a request for information. And let's take a fourth example, blockchain. What is the benefit of blockchain? It's to decentralize information and to be able to account for operation, for transactions. So this is a way to lower the transaction and agency cost and to better manage the supply chain, enforce contract, get more traceability on products. So let's dig into one example, online platform. What are exactly the type of function of the firm that could be handled on this platform? Almost every function could be operated on this platform. Marketing, advertising, customer services. You can find Instagram or Facebook or Google or YouTube as a platform to reach your customers. E-commerce, very well-known example, Amazon, eBay. Service delivery like Deliveroo, Airbnb. Financing operation, payments, communication, remote working as we are doing right now, R&D and design as well. We can also source open innovation solution on platforms. So there are a very large range of services and functions that could be accessed and operated on this platform. And now, what is the problem for SMEs? Because yes, there is, as Francesco highlighted, there is a gap. The smaller the firms, the more likely they are to be lagging in the digital transition. And why? It's because all SMEs do not have the capacity, the internal capacity to undertake a transformation. They need awareness of the type of solution and tools that exist. They need complementary investments. This has been highlighted heavily since the beginning of the day. They need skills. They need to change their practices, so the organization of business processes. And very often SMEs go digital by outsourcing digital solutions. So basically, I mentioned, for instance, the access to business intelligence services from the platform. This is a way to access data analytics. They also count on the digital product provider, digital solution provider to provide security by design, security for the tools and the product. And there are also some services like software as a services or machine learning as a services that are provided and could be a way for SMEs to move into the digital world. So as Francesco mentioned, there is a gap. Here you see a different form of technology, more or less sophisticated, and the diffusion rate for large firms. And if we look at the diffusion rate for medium-sized firms and the diffusion rate for small firms, we clearly see that there is some barriers the smaller the firms are to go to the digital world. Now, if we look at the same pattern, but across industry, it's also very clear that this is not the same story, and this is not the same digital journey in all industry. Some more advanced, more digital intensive industry, like the information services, will have a broader use of all these forms of technology. And some less digital intensive sector will have less use of some form of digital technology, but keep having a very intensive use. For instance, and here I would like to stress this point because it's relevant for the next discussion, is a very intensive use across all firm size of tools that allow interaction between business and government. And here you can see that the gap between the small and the large firm is very small when it comes to using e-government services. What happened recently? The COVID-19 crisis has given a very strong push to SME digital transformation. It has been an incentive for firms to move operation online, to sell online, to integrate like smart working solution, to be able to maintain business during the containment and lockdowns. But at the same time, we have also seen that this crisis has exacerbated cybersecurity risk. SMEs were not well prepared for this type of attack, very sophisticated attack, attacks that have been intensified during this crisis. And as are going more digital, moving operation online, they also are more exposed to this type of risk. So basically, in this context, yes, the COVID crisis has been a context that has helped SMEs or encouraged SMEs to go digital. But what was the barrier that were existing prior to the crisis are still there. We still have some legal uncertainty about what will be, for instance, the consequences on a small firm if they are using artificial intelligence or machine learning that are developed by another company without exactly knowing what are the consequences of, or if they are not able to audit the conclusion of the algorithm. There are market conditions as well that are very strict, distortion in competition with large companies being more able, for instance, to benefit from the network effect of the large platform. There are infrastructure issues. All SMEs, especially in remote area, rural area, are not necessarily able to access the digital infrastructure with the right speed at the right cost. We also have some financing gaps because this technology needs investment still, but this is not just in the technology, but also in skills, in retraining, in changing the organization. There are skills gaps, a need for greater digital awareness, a need for a greater improved data culture, and the risk of technological opportunity for technological complementarity, but also for technological lock-ins. So
I have to rush you just a bit, Sandrine, please.
Yeah.
If you can wind up.
So, in terms of policy, what is going on? There is a large policy consensus on the need to speed the digital transformation of SMEs, but at the same time, a large leeway on how countries are doing it. Why? Because, as I mentioned, it's a very complex era with a very broad scope, many different policy domains that are interacting. Some countries are targeting SMEs, some other countries are more like developing mainstream strategy where they intend to take into account the size constraints of the firm. So some countries are trying to scale up SME internal capacity, training, assistance, building a data culture. Some others are trying to provide them access to strategic resources, finance, skills, network, technology itself. Some countries are trying to build the right business environment, sound regulation, e-government services, and quality infrastructure. Oh, sorry. And some also are trying to have a whole of government approach with long-term strategic framework, new governance arrangement, especially in new technological fields like AI. The way forward, we need to remove regulatory barriers and market distortion. expand the infrastructure coverage in terms of speed and reach, enable SMEs to adopt technology but in a safe condition, adapt action to specific industry, because the digitalization process transition will be different from one industry to another. It's also need government to look at the business functions that are currently under transformation. It's not the same story if we talk about transforming the sales and the marketing and transforming, for instance, the financial operation or the interaction with government taxation. And we need more data. We need more data, more evidence, more comparable information, case studies, what's going on in different sectors for different types of industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandrine. Sorry, we're just a little bit pressed for time, and I want to make sure everyone has the floor, but thank you for an excellent overview. And now we look at Moldova's experience. Yulia Kostin, the General Director of ODIM, which is Moldova's kind of SME and entrepreneurship support agency, is a long-standing friend of the program, and her agency has been implementing a program to support digitalization of SMEs in Moldova. And I'd like to hear what you suggest might be the main lessons of your experience for other countries that are looking to support SME digitalization. Yulia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Your Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I am very pleased to participate in the today important event. Yesterday, our organization is celebrating its 17th anniversary. ODIM started activities in 2007 with 5 employees and 1 training program. Today, in 2021, we have more than 70 people and 12 national programs in current implementation. Not to mention the Credit Guarantee Fund, business incubators, multifunctional industrial platform as important elements of the business support infrastructure in the region. All this is an indicator that we are in the right path of understanding and responding to SMEs' needs and challenges, as well as the great trust in what we are doing. But today's event is not about ODIM, it is about promoting and supporting SMEs digitalization. It was May 26, 2020, just a day before the OECD Eurasia webinar on helping SMEs to weather the COVID-19 crisis in the Eastern Partnership countries, when the Moldovan SMEs digitalization tools was approved by the Ministry of Economy and Infrastructure as short-term initiative aiming to support business activities, to support SMEs during pandemic situation by training and enhancing their online presence, e-commerce and digitalization of the processes. In line with our event, I would like to outline the main features and results of this initiative. The business support tools is currently structured in 3 main components. First is capacity building or training as a compulsory part of the initiative. It was possible to offer tailored training structured in 2 models. This was possible due to the self-assessment questionnaire elaborated by us, available online and completed by the beneficiaries. It is worth mentioning here that due to that assessment, we separated the beneficiaries in 3 different groups: beginners, intermediary, and advised. Of course, all of the training and consultancies were via online platforms. The second component is financial support in form of business vouchers, aiming to help SMEs to develop their own web page, setting them up on socializing pages, developing their online profile and the description of companies and products, developing or maybe adjusting the web page, and join the marketplace platform that offer online payment possibilities and integrated logistic issue. The financial support offered was of maximum 1,000 euros each. The third component is financial support in form of the grant. This financial support was offered for the implementation of management systems purchase of equipment and software for the purpose of introduction new technology in the context of SME digitalization, and for the purpose of minimizing the risk imposed by the market. The grant amount was about 10,000 euros with 10% co-financing. In terms of results, during the only 1 year period, we had 2 calls for proposals for SMEs, and as a result received more than 600 applications, and the same number of self-assessment questionnaires were analyzed. So to enhance the knowledge of SMEs, we delivered 33 training sessions to 550 entrepreneurs and offered financing to 275 entrepreneurs, thus generating investment of about 30 million lei. It is worth mentioning, and I would like to express our gratitude to the implementation partners and to partners that co-financing this initiative along with the state budget, the European Union and the German government. From the implementation process, we would like to emphasize that when planning to launch similar support action, one should first coordinate and liaise with partners and stakeholders. This might open new perspectives. Developed a different range of information concerning the SMEs digitalization. Apply a self-assessment tool as it helps to provide tailor-made and needed training. Offer financial initiatives to provoke SMEs and monitor their action. It is hard work and permanent communication. That last but not least, evaluate the achieved results and adjust the upcoming support. There is a very short summary of what we've been doing and the most important recommendation from our practical experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And now I want to hear from Mr. Martin Lundborg, who heads the research and programs at Mittelstand Digital Initiative of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, who will tell us a bit about the network of competence centers in Germany to assist SMEs that they are running. Please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thompson, and thank you a lot to OECD for this really great event today. I think the discussions have been really interesting, and I think much of what we are doing is actually the conclusions we have drawn is very much aligned with the discussions we had this morning. I'm representing the Mittelstand Digital, which is a German digital hub initiative with 26 competence centers across Germany to help SMEs to take the first steps towards more digitization. I think we had the discussion this morning that knowledge and training belongs to the most crucial points to look at when trying to improve digitization in SMEs. And I think knowledge training is one of the most key components of our initiative. We also had the discussion about stakeholders this morning. It's very important to use the stakeholders and to include all the stakeholders that are relevant for more digitization, especially as SMEs are small companies, which typically are part of large value chains or value networks or ecosystems. So here networking is a natural part of the daily life of an SME. And I think this is where we also need to put some effort to build these networks, to develop these networks, and to make them more digital. The solution the German government has implemented with the competence centers is to build networks of academia, SMEs, and so-called multipliers. The multipliers are like chambers of commerce or industry organizations, non-government organizations, etc. And these multipliers provide the business networks. Because one of the key success factors for us, for our initiatives, is actually to reach as many SMEs as possible. And this can easiest be done by using the existing business networks that are out there. Because there's one thing we have really learned from working with SMEs, and that is that the CEOs of the SMEs, they prefer to listen to what other CEOs of other SMEs are saying and doing. And that's one of the leading stars for everything we are doing. CEOs, frankly, they listen to governmental representatives as well, and they also listen to what academia says. But if a CEO in their neighborhood has implemented a digital solution, they want to go for it as well. So that's very important. So when we provide our trainings, our information events, our publications, doing our workshops with the SMEs, we always look at what are the practical implementations which other SMEs actually have implemented, and what is the use case, what is the benefits for the SMEs, how does the business KPIs look like utilization of a machine park or of the workforce, or improved quality or shorter time to market or whatever. In 2019, we were able to reach 100,000 SMEs in Germany, so we have a pretty large reach, which is also because we have built in components of public relations work and marketing in our efforts. That is done on a national level, because doing events is really nice, but you always have the problem, how do you reach as many SMEs as possible? And here, as I said at the beginning, we do that by using existing business networks, and also by very active public relations work, where we also use the national media and doing a lot of publications. Another successful factor we have is to provide a broad set of competence. This is where we use academia, so we link academia to the SMEs. And here one of the crucial factors is also to safeguard that the content we get from academia is transformed and translated to the day-to-day situation of an SME. It needs to be more practical, it needs to be more business related than a lot of the information you get at universities, for instance. We also know that SMEs are acting regionally or locally, so it's important to have a local presence. And I think it's very important to have a comprehensive network of the experts as well. To add that, we have in our network about 1,000 experts at the moment from various industries, which is really helping the SMEs. I think to look at this, we used to have this term lifelong learning. And this is the concept we are trying to implement, because the SMEs are the ones who can do really good business. They're the businessmen, and we from the policy side, we're not the experts in running the businesses, but we are the one who can support them with knowledge and show solutions and motivate and create a cultural change. And that's where we are putting our effort.
Thank you so much. I have to rush you there a little, but we do need to move on. Thank you for that. Very sensible points and good experience from Germany. I now want to pass the floor to Ms. Alina Pairala, of the head of the Digitalization Initiatives Department in the Digitalization Authority of Romania, to tell us, in your experience in Romania, what are the main obstacles? What are the main barriers for SMEs in figuring out not only how to go digital, but where and in what ways it makes sense for them to go digital?
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Very well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, OECD, for this event and for the very insightful inputs on the SMEs process digitalization from the other states. The authority for the digitalization of Romania is the governmental body from the central public administration who is carrying out extensive work to coordinate the entire process of digitalization of the Romanian economy and society. That being said, the authority needs to review fully the progress of SMEs digitalization and to propose programs and projects for sustaining this process. This being particularly applicable given the EU founding period 2021-2027, which prompted us to make a detailed survey at the beginning of this year as to the barriers to Romanian SMEs digitalization, the background of European ones. Just like everywhere else, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the rate of corporate digitalization and has put managers in the position of learning fast and implementing even faster concepts and applications such as cybersecurity, ERP, cloud computing, alongside investing more in upgrading their technology and staff IT and C skills. While the latest period has shown us how adaptive and flexible companies can be, there is still a significant gap in digitalization performance between large companies and SMEs. There is also a major difference between having technology and actually embedding automation into the company operational process so as to increase productivity. Our latest in-depth survey on SMEs digitalization has revealed concerning patterns with a long-term impact on digital tools adoption, such as digitalization in Romania has had to overcome the ad hoc hardware and software purchase stage and evolve towards a coherent strategy plan for each company. This show to us an underlying severe condition indicating lack of entrepreneurial culture that place digitalization among the top prerequisites for productivity. We have also found that the SMEs declared the willingness to digitalize their operations is not based on actual knowledge of the effects that technology integration may have on the operation. This indicates that a lot has still to be done in order to make automation familiar to SMEs, especially given their diverse typologies, and also we need to assist them in identifying the right digitalization tools for their profile. As far as the identified digitalization barriers are concerned, Romania is not dissimilar to other countries in their range. I listened very carefully for the presentation of Mr. Solok from Poland, but it differs in their assigned priority. Just like everywhere else, the uncertainty of future digital standards, the lack of financial resources, the regulatory obstacles, and the lack of IT&C skills and also management skills, why not, are among the top barriers identified, but Romanian SMEs assign more importance to the lack of financial resources and less to IT security and future digital standards, contrary maybe to their European peers. It is also noteworthy that SMEs consider digitalization to be expensive, generating high cost, and they have little knowledge of the return of such kind of investments. This does not need to be true, but it does show that some digitalization barriers lie in perception, such as the high cost of technology and automation, which are not every time validated by reality. Assigned to lack of digital skills and knowledge for both management and staff, the topic of cyber security eludes most Romanian SMEs, which shows a perception that only large companies can be attacked and a lack of expertise in implementing technology. We have also found that there is a need for more clusters, hubs, support centers for SMEs digitalization that have a critical role in assisting startup and scales up also to achieve their potential by learning how to automate their operations. To conclude, we believe that underneath all highlighted barriers, which are particular expression of their economic circumstances, SMEs and in particular micro enterprises who make up the vast majority of SMEs in Romania, 99%, must be held to truly understand the importance of data for doing business in this age, irrespective of field, business model, supply chain, and also geography. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And now I say good evening, because we turn now to Singapore, a country which is in many ways seen as best practice in digitalization. And I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Edwin Leok, who's the Deputy Director of SMEs Go Digital in Singapore. Our time is very limited, but I still want to hear a little bit about the main building blocks of your agency's approach to supporting SME digitalization.
Okay, hi everyone. Good evening and good morning to you all. Thank you for the opportunity to share about SMEs Go Digital and to be invited by OECD to share this forum. So we are delighted to share. And at the same time, we also hear many items that resonate with us. I think the same challenges many of you are seeing in your own digitalization in your countries also happen in Singapore. So I just give you some orientation of the demographic in Singapore. Basically, I think Alina was mentioning that 99% of companies are SMEs, and in Singapore it's the same number. So 99%, we are a small country, so we have around 220,000 SMEs, but they contribute to about 60 to 70% of the jobs. So in terms of the workforce, and in terms of the GDP contribution, it's about 50%. So SMEs are an important part of the Singapore economy. And I'm actually part of the Infocom Media Development Authority in Singapore. So our objective is to help Singapore reinvent itself in the digital economy. So Singapore has been fairly successful in the last 50 years in the physical economy, but we are moving now towards digital. And in particular, we also need to make sure that the SMEs are able to benefit from going on this journey to digital. So our belief is that every business can be a digital business and every worker can be empowered by tech. Specifically for SMEs Go Digital, we aim to make it as simple as possible for SMEs to digitalize. So we have 3 steps. The first step is that SMEs need to be guided, because one of the questions SMEs say, we like to go digital, but what to do? So we have industry digital plans that are available for a number of the 23 sectors that we've identified for the economy. So a large number have it. And if the sectors currently do not have IDPs, then they will be having it very soon. So this is essentially a digital roadmap, a very easy one to guide SMEs in the sort of 3 stages of digitalization, from the basic stage, the intermediate stage, and the advanced stage of digitalization. The next step is that the second stage, or the second step we have, is that we actually pre-approve digital solutions, and we have around 350 digital solutions that we pre-approve, and many of them are from our local vendors. So 95% or higher are actually Singaporean ICT companies. We do have the bigger players as well, such as Microsoft, such as SAP, such as Oracle, or Salesforce.com, but by and large, we also offer solutions which come from our local companies. And the third area is the SMEs themselves. When they need to, they can go to our website, they can look for information which is available. But if they want to speak to someone, then we also have touch points such as our SME centers And we have digital tech consultants who are available at the where we work with the trade associations to enable this capability. So essentially, you can look at the business advisors as like going to the GP in the clinic. But if you need more advanced help, one-on-one help, then we also offer digital consultants who can provide advisory and handhold the SME through project implementation. So these are things that we try to make available to the SMEs. I think one thing we're happy to report is that actually the adoption has gone quite well. We have after 4 years seen 60,000 SMEs be supported by government co-funding. So the other thing which I may not have mentioned is that when we pre-approve the solutions, these solutions are supported by government grants, and SMEs who take up the solution, we help them to defray the cost of adopting these solutions. Yeah, so in terms of the adoption, we've also partnered with banks and the telecommunication companies, because we've seen that actually these are very helpful partners to help us to multiply our efforts. So for the Start Digital area, the banks and telcos have also when the SME goes to the bank to open a bank account because they need services to write a check or they need something to pay digitally, then the banks will also offer them digital solutions, and we've seen very strong take-up in that. And the telcos, if you go to the telco for a service, they, besides the broadband connection they offer, they would also suggest to the SME, why don't you take cybersecurity solutions or consider an accounting or payroll solution that you could adopt. Okay, and lastly, I think one of the initiatives that we've launched in the past year is to help companies sell beyond the shores of Singapore. Singapore is a small economy with about 5-6 million people, but surrounding the region, there are 500 to 600 million in population, and definitely many more companies and SMEs in the region. And we wanted our companies to also go overseas, and hence we have the Grow Digital initiative.
Thank you so much. That was short, focused, very much to the point, and we're very grateful. But now I will switch languages. Beware what
Next member of our panel, Mr. Igor Dvorkovich, is the head of the marketing department of Belarus company Чистый берег, Clean River. Or what digitalization meant for your company, and especially would like to know what was your main problem and how did you manage to overcome them? Please, you have the floor.
Да, я вижу. Микрофон нужно включить, я думаю. Вот. Слушаем вас.
Добрый день. Да, микрофон у меня был включен, просто, видимо, из-за...
Hello, I forgot to switch on the mic. Sorry. Clean River, Belarus, where small company. We've been existing for 25 years. I would like to just to share my experience as far as the transformation of our business is concerned. I could speak for a very long time, but I'm limited, and of course I would like to go rather fast. We started to work when there was a chaos in Belarus, when we left the transformation just to the market, when you have the products in your storage facilities and everybody was ready to buy anything you had. It lasted for 5-7 years, this situation. and then it's ended, and we switched to the buyer's market. So it was not enough to have something in your reserves, but in your inventory, but you have to, of course, to customize things more or less in order to attract consumers. And of course, this consumer market is changing now, again, because the consumer is not just someone who can buy something from your shop, but very often it means that it will need this product for some times in some place. That's why these market developments, these new trends, asked for the implementation of digital technologies. Now we are managing all our inventories digitally.
Начинания объединить в единую систему. С конца прошлого года мы
At the beginning of the last year, we created the internet portal, internet infrastructure to work within the company, also with other companies and within other ecosystem. That's quite difficult process on one side, but on the other side, there are many examples of it. Our feature is that we do not work to the business with government or other businesses. We are classical B2B business. We development on the trade objects on the territory of Belarus. We have constructed 14 different mall or other trade businesses. We practically are one of the biggest B2B businesses. We also provide our end products for the specialists, for the professionals. So that's why our task nowadays is to create a platform that will simplify the relation between our customers and our specialists with our big structure, if you measure it by Belarusian measures, and allows us quite fast to provide them all necessary. Of course, on our way, we encountered the complications and challenges. Lack of experience that is needed and that other countries have. And we need to learn this experience in other countries and try to transfer it to our economy, even though our economy is kind of different from the economic system in the countries where representatives are sitting now today. And also you have talked about some legal frameworks, some specificity of legal systems. We also understand that digitalization of business, it's the right way. It will allow us to be closer to the customer, to have easier access to markets, have a better products. And thanks to our internet platform, I think we will be getting to our final customers. Also, we can have the customers in other countries. So our customers can provide services directly to customers in other countries. I don't know if I spoke well and really I achieved what I wanted to achieve, because really 4 minutes, it's not enough. But in general, if it was useful, I am very happy about it. Thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you. It was
now we come to our last panelist, but by no means the least. So I'm grateful for his patience and his participation. Mr. Jesus Lozano is an IT entrepreneur, a senior expert on SME digitalization. And you've got long experience as an investor and entrepreneur, now deeply involved in the SME digitalization agenda in the Eastern Partner region. Can you share us your views as a practitioner on what it means and what are the basic building blocks for the policy agenda that countries need to promote digitalization?
Yes, yes, of course. But first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this very exciting panel, okay? And to give me the opportunity to talk about what should be the role of the government as a facilitator on the digital transformation of the industry, of the SMEs. I would like, first of all, to define as a sum up what is the meaning of digital transformation. And to clarify, as my colleague said before, it's quite important that to know that digital transformation, it doesn't mean only about digitalization. It is totally a mindset. So it is how business people or employees, they think first digital on how to solve problem or face a challenge, on how does technology solve the problem, okay? We were performing, for example, in Armenia, a diagnosis about the digital maturity of the multi-sectorial SMEs, small and medium enterprises in Armenia. And we got, just following the previous poll, we got the results that, for example, in Armenia, 70% of the owners of company owners, they don't face digital transformation or digitalization because of lack of knowledge. Only 48% they mentioned that they don't face it because of the expensive of the technology. Also 82% of the business people, they also mentioned it that they don't face digital transformation because of the lack of technological vision and the fear of change, okay? On the other hand, we have also to clarify that digital transformation is not only about one technology. Okay, many of my colleagues, you were mentioning about the specific technologies, the specific emerging technologies, and the impact inside the company. But digital transformation is about the technology combination. So it's about how a combination of technologies are maximizing the results inside the companies. So, for example, following the same diagnosis, in Armenia, 80% of the startups, they have a corporate website, but only 25%, well, 80% corporate website, 98% of the startups, Armenian startups, they have presence on the social media, but only 25% of those startups, they are having or they are using online tools to generate sales. So they're selling online, and only 9% of the Armenian startups, for example, they invest in digital marketing. So it's not only about creating an e-commerce or giving them a 3D printer, it's the full of combination of those technologies. So what should be the objectives? What should be the role of the government on totally supporting the digital transformation in the industry? So if we consider that it's about digital mindset and combination of technologies, I guess that the government should need to have three main objectives. So for the first objective or main objective is to raise awareness through the SMEs on the benefits and opportunities of the digital transformation. Okay. The second objective, as we mentioned before, is to improve totally the digital skills of the professionals. So to face the digital transformation inside the enterprises, the companies. And the third objective is to promote the digital transformation of the SMEs as an engine for the economical growth, for the economic growth. So the way to face those objectives is through three main strategic lines. Okay, so we're mentioning, for example, from our colleagues also a lot of so many specific actions, and all of them, I agree with all of them, but we have to think that the government should have to follow three strategic lines on first of all, promote, so diffusion and sensitization of the digital transformation. So for example, with activities, for example, creating awareness programs about the benefits of specific technologies, developing digital innovation centers, that's quite important. So making sure that business associations, chambers of commerce, or many public sectorial organizations, they face or they're aware and they face this sensitization in the private sector on the benefits of the digital transformation. There are many other examples that we have no time to mention. The second strategic line should be about the digital talent development. Some colleagues were mentioning before, and I totally agree about the need on creating this digital talent. And this is done with activities such as developing, for example, trainings on digital transformation strategies for executives or for consultants. Consultants are quite important to spread the digital transformation into the different industries, or developing trainings on a specific digital solutions for the business people and professionals. Developing, for example, digital transformation education inside the universities. We have many masters, for example, in my country, in Spain, on masters on digital transformation and innovation. And the last strategic line should be to boost the digital transformation. Maybe it is the quite more important, okay? So the first two lines are about education, about the mindset. The third line is about the combination of those technologies. So for example, obviously offering financial aid to the companies to face the digitalization. We were mentioning, for example, about the importance of the ecosystems, of the IT ecosystems, that obviously those are very important, are not the priority, let's say, if we talk about the topic of digitalization of the industry. But for example, creating programs to promote the intersectorial collaboration. So obviously joining the engineering talent into the need of digitalization of the different industries. Or for example, creating piloting programs to boost the industry 4.0. We are here talking mainly about the multi-sectorial, about the basis of digital transformation, but digital transformation of the industry should be at the industry level. So we are talking about technology 4.0. We are talking about how to use agro-technologies to digitalize our agroeconomy. We are talking about health technologies to digitalize our health sector. We are talking about fintech to digitalize our companies. So it's about, for example, doing pilotings on those selected industries. Well, I'm trying to keep the time, so I think I can finish here.
Thank you very much for an excellent, actually a terrific summing up, a series of key strategic directions that I think well reflect much of the discussion that's gone before. So I'm very glad we had you in to kind of bat cleanup, as they say in American baseball. And now I'd like to pass the floor for some brief closing remarks to my colleague, Daniel Quadbeck, who heads the Eastern Europe and South Caucasus unit in the OECD's Eurasia division. Daniel, please.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone for participating in today's discussion. I think we had a very rich exchange, many different perspectives, and I think a very good start for this exciting new project that will give us the chance to dive very deeply in some of the points that were raised today over the next 3 years. I think what became very clear today is that from an SME perspective, digitalization is not just an opportunity, it is a necessity. SMEs that are not ready to think about how to leverage digital solutions as part of their businesses will likely fall behind their competitors that may be able to provide a better customer experience, improve the quality of their products and services, or simply lower cost to increase productivity. I think what also became clear today is that there is an important role for policy to play to make sure that SMEs do not continue to fall further behind larger firms. There is a huge digital gap, and there is a risk of increasing inequalities and of widening the digital divide. So governments need to provide a level playing field and act to address market failures that put SMEs at a disadvantage. So that means we will look over the coming months and years at issues like affordable access to digital solutions, fair competition, for example, also in the access to online platforms, legal and regulatory settings to promote access to and uptake of digital solutions, but also issues like skills development, financing, and how to establish a digital culture and mindset, which is critical. A point that was stressed by many speakers, and I want to stress it again, is that it's essential that we look at digitalization not as a goal in itself, but as a driver, as an enabler that SMEs can pragmatically use to adapt their business model, to improve their business processes, to deliver a better customer experience that will ultimately help companies to stay ahead of the curve and succeed in the market. So over the coming months, for the rest of this year, we will organize a series of technical webinars. We will look at a number of aspects such as the role of digital solutions and tools, such as online platforms that can offer new market opportunities, new sourcing channels, access to networks. We will, after the summer, have a second webinar looking at the role of skills, in particular, skills development, how to acquire the relevant competences. And then we will look in October specifically at what SME agencies can do to foster the adoption of digital solutions and the adjustment of business models and business processes. So in parallel, we will prepare a regional study that should be ready by the end of this year. So we will come back to all of you for data collection requests and hope that we can work to fill some of the gaps in the data that we have seen. We want to use this study also as a baseline, as a starting point for updating our SBA assessment methodology for the SME Policy Index, which shall include digitalization as a cross-cutting element in all policy dimensions for the next round. So we hope to start the new assessment in 2022 and to have this component reflected in the fourth edition of this index. In parallel, we will also run a survey of SME agencies already this year to have a better understanding of what countries are already doing in this field, and we will reach out to all agencies to discuss this very shortly. We already will start working also at the country level. So this year we will focus in particular on Georgia and Azerbaijan to take some of the elements a bit more in-depth level and identify some recommendations and ideas for what could be done specifically in those country contexts. And we'll have a discussion around those reports also at the end of the year at the next round of the OECD Eurasia Competitiveness Roundtable peer reviews. So I'll stop here. I would like to thank you all again for joining us, for staying with us until now. Many thanks again to the European Union for the financial support, to Poland as well. And of course, many thanks to all our experts, to my colleagues from different parts of the OECD and to all participants. I'm very excited about this new project, and I'm looking forward to have more opportunities to discuss and work together over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Not much to add to that, except that I welcome the comment in the chat concerning women in business. And we do see this as one of the areas that gender equality is something we mainstream into all our work, and it will be reflected here. Other than that, I would just repeat Daniel's thanks to all the participants, to my OECD colleagues, to the speakers, to those OECD colleagues who are behind the scenes that you didn't see or hear today, but who made the Zoom work, who made the registration work, who helped us deliver this event. And finally, always the last word of thanks, but terribly important, to our outstanding interpreters who've probably worked harder than any of us this morning, and they've been at it now for coming up to 3 hours. So I think it's time we gave them and ourselves a break. Thank you all. Have a great day. We hope to see you for future events.
See you. Bye.